Hi everyone, welcome to the session of our web series Fireside Chat with Champions, in which we interview global business leaders, asking them crowdsourced questions relevant to biggest challenge we face today, COVID-19 and its impact on various aspects of business and the way we can steer ourselves in these current uncertainties. Today we have a special guest with us, Frida Polli. She is an award-winning Harvard and MIT trained neuroscientist turned into startup founder. She completed her pre-doctoral training in neuroscience at Harvard Medical School and her postdoctoral fellowship in neuroscience at MIT, earned her MBA from Harvard Business School and PhD from Suffolk University. After a decade in academic neuroscience, Frida sought to apply neuroscience and data science to real-world problems. She is now CEO and co-founder of Pymetrics, a startup that uses advances in cognitive neuroscience to help companies better understand their workforce while making better and fairer people decisions. Pymetrics uses behavioral science and ethical AI technology to serve customers, including MasterCard, Unilever, and LinkedIn. The company's primary backers are General Atlantic, Jazz Venture Partners, Khosla Ventures, Salesforce Ventures, and it has thus far raised close to 56.6 million in funding. Thanks, Frida, for accepting our invitation. Would request you to let our viewers know more about you and your current interest. Believe me, this is the longest resume I have read for someone. You are
I'm sorry, I should have made it short.
Talented person. Thanks. Pleasure to be talking to you.
Pleasure to be talking to you as well.
Yes, so floor is yours. Please talk a little bit about you, your current activities for our viewers.
Sure, you covered it very well. So Pymetrics is a talent matching platform that can be used for any type of workforce decision. We do a lot in the hiring space, obviously. That's one of the main places people want to understand somebody's fit to a job. But we also do internal mobility and reskilling. The underlying technology, the main goal of the technology is to help a person understand their best fit to any job, really, and to help companies understand which of the many people they could be choosing from they should focus on, and also where they should be having them focused. So it's really trying to optimize both sides of the supply and demand side of the workforce to optimize fit.
That's great to know your current activities, and Frida, you have been there, done it, right? That sort of personality we can talk since 2013 when you started your startup, and you have gone through various phases from raising funds to finding the right problem to solve, and then 2018 being honored as technology pioneer by World Economic Forum. Only thing I'm having common to you is that I was also part of that cohort selected as technology pioneer in 2018. Other than that, you have achieved far more than any one of us in that cohort. So I would like to ask you, from a startup's perspective, right? How do you see COVID-19 impacting the startup ecosystem and also the subsequent economic downturn, which all of us seeing? How it is going to impact how the future startup will be in situation or in this environment?
Yeah, so I mean, I think obviously it's very dependent on the industry you're in. So I don't think there's such a thing as the startup environment. It really depends on whether, I mean, obviously startups that are focused on, live person events or travel or hospitality are similarly impacted to the big airlines and the big hotel chains. So it's not about startup versus big company. I really think it's about whether your product is very dependent on physical contact or not. I think that's kind of one of the main ways to think about it. So, and I think obviously if you are, then things have changed dramatically for you. But if you are not, then things have maybe not changed, or maybe even you've had an uptick in business, right? If you think about Zoom, which was, one of the best performing stocks, and we're on Zoom. So, and I think that, from our perspective, because we don't only do hiring, our business is, fairly, to date, we haven't seen a big upheaval in terms of what companies are wanting to do with us. If anything, they're moving more towards mobility and reskilling than they are hiring, but at some point hiring is going to come back. And if anything, you're going to need to go through even more candidates than before, because everyone is going to be coming back to work at the same time and trying to understand their best fit. So, and again, we're, an AI and digital platform. So there's, if anything, I think we remove human physical need for physical, travel, for example. We can do a lot of that digitally, which I think is really helpful to people now. Just like now, you and I are chatting over Zoom, even though you're in India and I'm in the United States. So I think there's more and more of that going on, and we facilitate that in a workforce decision context. And I think, as will be true for many industries going forward, I think we're going to rethink the value of certain activities that are very high in physical contact, but potentially low in value. So I'm going to use one that's completely outside of the hiring realm. If you think about all the travel that we do for conferences, I think there will be some rethinking of that, given all of the beauty of, again, my life used to be jumping on a plane for a 24 to 48 hour trip to give, a 1 hour presentation somewhere in a different country or different state. And, now I can do that from my home, with Zoom, and I'm not sure that every single occasion required me to meet everybody in person. So that's an example of something where I think, we're going to wonder, like, is it necessary to do all of that traveling when we're getting maybe 80-85% of the value of the interaction, through a digital platform. And I think the same is true for hiring. If you think about job fairs where people go simply to drop a resume at a table with a recruiter and maybe chat with them for 2 seconds and hope that somebody remembers them. That's a lot of physical contact with a lot of other people, and the value to either the recruiter or the person is pretty minimal, in my opinion. You're not really giving that person a shot to really shine. It's a very cursory experience. So there are a lot of things, I think, in the world of work and, in outside of that will be rethought as a result of this pandemic and, future concerns around other pandemics. And, there will be a lot of changes that happen. And again, they will relate to physical contact and other things, like sort of supply chain has come under a lot of stress, right? So there's a thinking out there that people will start to want to source things more locally, right? We already saw this, like in the farm to table movement and Sweetgreen that, sources all of its products locally. But I think there may be, other sort of changes that happen in sort of supply chain management that force people to be more, hyper local. So I think we'll see a lot of changes. Who knows how strong they'll be, how, sort of how long they'll last. But I think a bunch of things will be changed.
That's great. Like, coming from someone like you who's actually with a lot of hiring information and how the companies are hiring, that brings very, very clear insights. Continuing to what please.
No, I was just going to say, and I think that, quite frankly, a lot of the older practices we had around hiring were not geared towards efficiency. They were just geared towards, let's do this because we've done this for a long time. But at the end of the day, the reason I started this company was to help people find jobs, right? Yes, I want obviously our clients to be happy and everything else, but at the end of the day, I think it's really to help, people. Everyone has needed a job. Everyone has a job. Everyone understands the value of that. And can we make that, more efficient for the job seeker, more fair for the job seeker, more accurate for the job seeker? Like, I think we really need to build this technology with the job seeker in mind. And of course, companies will benefit. There's no doubt that they're going to benefit. They see tremendous value. But if we put the job seeker first, I think everyone wins. And no time will be more important to be focused on the job seeker than after whatever that means, COVID, because there are 30 million unemployed people in the United States, I think is the latest count. And all of those people are desperate to find their place back in the world of work. So I really, truly believe we fundamentally have to rethink our processes with the job seeker in mind first, rather than saying, we've always done it this way and therefore we should keep doing it that way. That's, job seeking is terrible for job seekers right now. And I think we need to improve it dramatically. And I think technology can be a big force of change for that. So.
No, that's why actually when I go through the profile of your company and the work you are doing, two things stands out very, very clearly, which gives us like a lot of hope and a lot of that positive vibes. One thing is that actually when we talk about, or you talk about from pedigree to actually the potential of the candidate itself. So
Yep.
that's very, very
Yep.
refreshing. At the same time, also you talk about using AI in an ethical way, because
Yep.
like, when you are dealing with lives of people, right? A bias of AI, because we
Yep.
also practice a lot of AI stuff. But being a data scientist myself, I see like, the biases when you make those models, right, can impact lives going forward. In
Yep.
your case, the job seekers, in my case, the farmers. So again, we are
Yep.
doing something which is very, very critical. So that brings me a little bit of like,
Yep.
further questioning about the sectors, because you talked
Sure.
about like, the different sectors would definitely be impacted differently. Airlines or contact related activities like restaurants and tourism,
Yep.
they are gonna be in back burner for really few years. But what are the sectors,
Yep.
like other than the digital sectors, which are definitely are growing? Do you see like,
Yep.
I'm talking about old economy, that you believe that would be having shorter getting back to normal than the others? So what would be the sunshine sectors according to you?
Yeah. I mean, look, I mean, everyone wants, that's the $1 million question, right? But I mean, I think that we already see some trends there, right? So again, I do think that technology has come out of this looking, like a real benefit. And I think that's a good thing, obviously with the caveats that we have to be mindful of all of the unintended consequences that we were aware of before, right? I mean, healthcare at the end of the day, whether it's, dealing with the pandemic, finding cures for the pandemic, and so on and so forth. I think healthcare, life science, all of that sector will continue to be strong, and probably, boom, right? Add to that, anything that's in pharma, like CVS, healthcare, drugstores. I mean, all of that I think is obviously going to see, resistance to the pandemic and growth. And then obviously, if we are going to do less, if we are going to do less physical contact, then we will require sort of logistics, supply chain providers, whether it's large, the Amazons of the world, or whether it's sort of more local, operation, supply chain, companies. I think those will obviously, they are already seeing a boon, and will continue to see a boon. And I mean, I think, quite frankly, I was talking about this with my husband the other day, and we were talking about like, well, what are the things that people will want to go back to doing after it's safe versus not? And I mean, for example, let's take travel. I think everyone will be dying to take a vacation, quite frankly, because, it's been kind of a grind. I spend 23 hours in the same room. I work in my room. I sleep in my room, right? Like, I want a vacation. So I think that I will want to take a risk to go do that, as opposed to, as I mentioned before, like all of the endless business travel that I was doing. I mean, of course I want my business to do well, but if there's a way to do the conference presentation without hopping on a plane, I'm going to think about that. And I think we have to apply that lens of sort of like, what is the value to the human being that they're getting, whether it's an enjoyment value or whatever it is, versus the risk, right? The risk of, whatever that may be. And I don't know that anyone's done that calculus, but I think that's the lens that we have to apply when we think about what will be resistant versus not as resistant. And I think the thing we should not do is assume and I don't think people are assuming this, but that somehow business as usual is just going to, business reopens means everything is going to be BAU. I think that's not a good way to think about it, because I think a lot of activities will be questioned through that lens of what is the value, whether it's, hedonistic value, like I need a vacation, I want to have fun, or some actual tangible value. But I think that that's going to be questioned more than, well, we've always done it this way. So
perfect, very, very well
is that
articulated.
helpful?
Yeah, no, very helpful. In fact, like, when we talk about everybody hitting down that travel is not going to pick up, that's a very, very like refreshing comment from you, that no, people will still love to travel, but maybe for unwinding, for like, being with the family rather than like, just the business travel. So that's a great insight.
Right.
Also, I would like to like, the same question, I would like, because you yourself have been with some of the Ivy Leagues in the world, right? Some of the topmost institutions. How do you see the education evolving or changing? Because now I'm seeing like my son having like, classes on Zoom, right? I'm
Yep.
It's difficult for me to understand that, because like, suddenly you cannot just make offline thing online, right? There has to be some methodology in doing it. But suddenly because of COVID, all the school, they say, go to Team, go to Zoom, and then same old way, there is a blackboard, teacher teaching, and then there is just some camera. I'm not a big fan of that, but I would like to understand from someone who is smarter than me, that how do you see edutech or the way the education is being imparted? Do you think that's the right way, or do you see things changing a little bit more in that direction?
I mean, Deepak, it's a great question. I don't have an answer. I'll give you a couple of thoughts. Okay. So first of all, think about it. So one, the Ivy League institutions, or all, top universities, limit attendance because of physical space. They say, well, we can only admit, 6,000 students because that's all the room we have. Well, if all of a sudden physical space isn't a limiting factor, then do you need to, what is the limit on attendance, right? So that's just one thing to think about, because all of them will tell you they get way more people they could admit than that, from a qualification perspective, than they have the physical space to admit. So if that caveat is out the window, if that barrier is out of the window, then what does that mean for elite institutions, or even whatever institution, right? Secondly, if you think about college in the US, and I've been to college here, and I'm not sure what it's like in India, but a lot of it is really, parents, and I'm the parent of a 14-year-old, might question, I'm sending my kid, so that they can, skip class, drink too much, and go out with girls and boys, right? Now, of course, we see that as a coming of age, right, ritual, passage, and all the rest of it. But, there may be some fundamental questioning of that if, again, there's dramatic change in sort of the physical component of that, right? And again, if a lot of this stuff can be done better or just as well on Zoom or whatever, then what does that mean? I think fundamentally people are social creatures. So we're never going to, and nor should we ever sort of limit, people getting together. That is something that I think everyone desperately needs and wants. So there's that piece of it as well. But again, it's questioning maybe the way in which we bring people together, whether it's, again, and I do think that higher ed is going to have to take a look and say, what is the real value that I'm bringing? And I am a huge believer in education. I think education opens people's minds in ways they have never seen before. And as a total tangent, there's this amazing show where they follow incarcerated felons who go through a very stringent college program, and just how much it opens their minds. But obviously they're going to college in a jail cell. So the point is we have to disaggregate the education, the value of education of the professors and the quality and everything else from the physical component, just like we will every place else. And who knows what that will mean. I don't know. I'm sure it will be changed though. I have no doubt in saying that. So.
No, yeah, that's see, getting a new perspectives is always welcome. Except if my son is not going to prom night on Zoom, I'm fine with it. What things are happening, right? So that's bring us to something which, please, you were saying something.
Well, I was just going to say, Deepak, even think about office space, right? It's really interesting to think of office space, because technology companies, I think, have been some of the first to say, oh, we're gonna work from home for the next 12 months, right? And I don't care if the stay-at-home order is lifted, we're gonna work from home, because they think, oh, my employee has to take the subway to go to work, and is that safe, and yada yada, right? Versus I think in New York City, financial services is considered an essential occupation. Who knows why? No, I'm joking, but and they're still going to offices. So I think. But do we need to go to an office, and do we want to go to an office, and who does, and how often? And, if you're a mother and you have children at home, isn't it nice to go have lunch with your kids and then come back to work? And, if you think about it, work only became disaggregated from family life in the industrial age, right? Prior to that, it was sort of an agrarian society where everyone worked and, worked and had family together. Think about a farm, right? So the point is, it's not like we've been separating work and family for millennia. It's more like centuries, and maybe there's some sort of place where that doesn't go into the future, where there's more of a questioning of that too. I was just talking to somebody the other day, and I was like, what if an office became a place that you went to hang out with, but it wasn't necessarily your work colleagues? What if I just go to an office because I want to hang out with Joe and Mike and Jane, but they're not my work colleagues. I just want to go for the social interaction. All my work colleagues I work with over Zoom. maybe that doesn't happen. But the point is, I think it's a very exciting time in some ways to rethink what we've done. And is that the best way of doing things, or are there a lot better ways to do things? So, and I think that's particularly true for, like I said, when we think about people that have been sort of disadvantaged by traditional systems, whether it's, women that have children at home where they might need that extra flexibility, or people that are disabled and can't fly around the world and travel because, they are not able to, and yet a Zoom conference allows them to participate with the same level of engagement as, somebody who's, fully able. So I think there is a great opportunity to make the world more diverse and more interesting and more creative and unique, rather than just sort of this cookie cutter mold of what we've been doing for so long. So.
No, that's great. So I'll ask you something which is connected, because you've already started talking a little about the future of work, right? That we might not be doing the work which we used to do before COVID, right? Because the duration of COVID have made us understand the value of the digital tools, and maybe it pushed us, but we have found that it is not that bad, right? Because we have been part of WEF for 2 years. Because of COVID, now we are at least talking for half an hour, right? We would have crossed paths in Dalian, in Tianjin, in Davos, but never we had opportunity of talking to each other for for 20-25 minutes. So again, the COVID, I'm saying that is making us understand the value of some of digital tool, which saves a lot of time, travel. Now that brings me to something which is what you are already doing. How do you see the way the recruitment process works? How do you see the people more relying on the gamification of the test and all that? Because as you know that previously I used to hire people by calling them to my office. I used to see their attitude, what they are talking, right? Having some physical presence, so that I would get some messages, right? And those messages, I don't know, I have not digitized it or codified it, but I know past 15-20 years, they have taught me something to understand someone a little bit better. How do you see AI replacing a lot of what we believe is our sixth sense, right, in recruiting process?
I don't see AI replacing. Let me just be clear. I see, so if you think about the number of people that are actually interviewed, it's between 2 and 10%. So what happens to the other 90%, right? So that's really one of the main places that I think we can use AI, is to make that process of who actually gets to speak to somebody much more accurate, much more efficient, and much more fair. Okay, so let's just be clear. That's one of the main places that we can intervene, and that is what we do. We're at the very top of the funnel. Then when you start thinking about interviewing, you can interview somebody digitally, like we're doing now, right? Without the loss of the sixth sense. I mean, I don't think it really, yes, maybe there's a smidge of something that's lost, but I think a lot of people would say it's pretty much, it's pretty consistent with a real world experience. So, and that is how Pymetrics works, right? We have this initial process where we don't replace humans. Humans are making these decisions of who to interview, not by actually meeting someone, but by reading a resume or by some other way that's not very accurate and oftentimes biased. So that's where we can really intervene. And then we can make the interview process more digitized. So again, reducing the physical component of it. And quite frankly, it's more democratizing, because at least in the US, the likelihood that a company will recruit at a college has less to do with the quality of the education and more to do with how close they are to a big city, right? So you could be a great college out in the middle of nowhere and no one's coming to you because you're far away. I mean, is that a right way to recruit? I mean, so again, I think that removing the physical component actually allows us to be a lot more accurate, efficient, and fair in the process. And so I don't think it removes the human touch, and I wouldn't want it to remove the human touch at all. I think, again, I am a human. I really like humans a lot. I think they're pretty great. But again, if we have to rely on older systems that we've used forever, I don't think that's the right way to approach this problem.
Right. So I was also going through one of your, because I cannot leave you without asking those questions, because I saw a beautiful interview which I think you gave in Davos to BCG, where you talk about two very, very critical topics. One was about ethical AI, and secondly about how AI is going to reduce or not reduce the number of people who are employable, because a lot of things will become automated, right? Because more intelligence in the system means maybe you need human being more. I want to understand a little bit from you the perspective of that, because someone who is being a leading light in this area, your views would be like very important for us to.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think in terms of ethical AI, I think what's important to note is that, so again, I'm a cognitive neuroscientist. The bias that is present in every human brain is not something we can ever get rid of, right? So we should stop trying to debias brains and start trying to debias technology and processes, because there we have some hope of reducing bias. In the human brain, it's pretty much impossible, right? So that's where the ethical AI piece comes in, is that, you know, and Sendhil Mullainathan at University of Chicago wrote a great op-ed on this, basically saying, look, for an algorithm, it leaves a trail. I can audit that trail. I can fix things. I mean, you're a data scientist. I can change, you know, the features, the feature weightings, you know, a bunch of different things so that the output is more statistically fair. Does that make sense? And that's really what we should be doing. And that's what we do in the process of creating ethical AI. There are obviously other considerations, not just, you know, statistical parity, but that's sort of, you know, the hallmark. And then in terms of like, I'm not a big proponent of AI is going to take away all the jobs and we're all going to be on universal basic income. And I'll tell you why, because if I look around the world today, there are many, many, many activities that need to be done. Now, whether they are paid jobs or not, that's a separate question. And so maybe we have to rethink the way we sort of compensate different things. But I would be hard put to say that, oh, our job is done. We can all go to Tahiti, put up our feet and live on UBI. I also think that what does one do during the day if one doesn't have a job? A job is not just a means of supporting oneself. That's one aspect. A job is a purpose, right? A job is a meaning. It's my meaning in life. And yes, of course, I have my family and I love my family, but if I don't have a meaning in life, then what does that make me, right? So I personally think that if we really think that paid occupations are going to take a huge hit, we have to think about how we can rejigger the economic model, because I don't think UBI is a good way to think about it, because it is sort of, it disaggregates the economic livelihood from the purpose thing, and I think that's just that's a break that I'm not sure we want to make for people. So.
No, I perfectly I agree with what you said. Like, you know, very recently I was being asked a similar question, that how do you think AI is gonna be, like, you know, replacing people, and what is your view that actually the youngster, the next generation should do to avoid that? I said, start becoming more human, right?
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
so more human with more compassion.
You'll have a lot of things to do in your life. Exactly. Deepak, I'm just noting that we're at the hour, so
last question to you, and yes, and then I'll let you go. So the last question for you is that I need 3 silver bullet from you for any startup who is currently pre-revenue, that what 3 things they should do to come out of with this current situation with oxygen still there for them to breathe.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Well, look, I mean, I think it's very simple. Not easy to do, but simple in, you know, concept. I mean, I think you always have to be scrappy no matter what, right? So really consider, like, what are the ways that I can sort of extend my runway, and, you know, and all of the ways that you can do that, even things that you wouldn't have considered pre-COVID. I think nothing's, you know, off the table. I think the second thing is, you know, you have to be sort of flexible in terms of where you're seeking funding. There's no shame, I don't think, in any kind of funding now. It's a totally different climate, and I think that, you know, no shame whatsoever. And then I think fundamentally also just thinking of how can I be relevant to the new world, right? Because I think inspiring people that, you know, your company is going to come out of this very relevant to what you're going to be doing in the future is the third thing that I would say is pretty critical for any venture. So hopefully that's helpful.
No, this is very, very helpful, and I learned a lot from this discussion we had, and I hope the audience will also have become wiser after discussion with you. Frida, thanks a lot for sharing your views with us. Pleasure talking to you. Thank you. God bless you.
Talking to you too. Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste. Bye.